Good afternoon and welcome to the 2022 Oregon Active Transportation Summit. My name is Lindsay Huber, she, her, and I'm the Education Director at the Street Trust. Welcome to We Have a Grant for That. You can type your questions in the chat or use the raise hand tool, both found at the bottom of your screen. Please use the social media hashtag OATS22 to post about the summit on social media. And don't forget to visit our website at thestreettrust.org to learn more about our other programs and activities. For those of you in the Portland area, we'll also be having a Safe Routes to School happy hour later today, starting at 5 p.m. at Ron Tom's. So if you're local, we hope that you can join us. Now, without further delay, please welcome to your screen, Leanne Ferguson.
Hi, everybody. We have like a small but mighty group today, so I'm excited to be here to talk to you all. My name is Leanne Ferguson, work at the Oregon Department of Transportation and the Safe Routes to School program, and know a lot of y'all and don't know a lot of y'all. So maybe we know we'll have time for questions at the end. So at that point, if you feel like being engaged, you can turn your camera off and we can have a Q&A about ODOT grants. But you're here today for the We Have a Grant for That presentation. I am joined with a couple of other ODOT folks, and so I will, I think we go to the next slide. And so I'll have them introduce themselves in just a second, but I will go over quickly what we'll talk about today. We'll meet a couple of the grant managers who are here to present about their programs, but you'll learn about sort of the world of ODOT grants that are available. We'll go over those grants, how you can apply, who you can contact for more information, and then we'll spotlight on a couple of grants that we have the grant managers here today, which will be the Safe Routes to School grant program and the Oregon Community Paths grant program. And then we'll leave lots of time for questions. Our main goal here today is to be able to connect you with the grant opportunities that meet your needs, that meet the needs of your community. Next slide, please. So, I, again, am Leanne Ferguson. I work for the Public Transportation Division. I'll ask my colleague, Alan, to introduce himself next. You're muted, Alan.
Still muted.
Still muted. And go back to the other slide. Alan's also in charge of slides. Sorry, everybody.
I'm pushing the wrong buttons and it's just going backwards every time I do it.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Hi, I'm Alan Thompson. I'm the Oregon Community Paths Program Manager.
Awesome. Alan works with me in the Public Transportation Division, where we house the PED Bike Program, the Safe Routes to School Construction Program, the Community Paths Program, and the Statewide Transportation and Improvement Fund Program, which is our transit funding. And I also want to introduce my colleague, Heidi Manlove. Can you introduce yourself next, Heidi?
Hi, everyone. I'm Heidi. I get to work with the lovely Leanne on Safe Routes to School. I work on the education side of the program. I also work on education and behavior work on bike ped safety programming. I'm housed in the Transportation Safety Office within DMV at ODOT.
Thank you so much, Heidi, for introducing yourself. We're all actually we've gotten pretty close over the pandemic at ODOT. And so Heidi mentioned this morning, she was like, can always tell when Leanne's going to do a presentation because I'll put on earrings and I'll call it like my fancy clothes. So that was our reminder today that we were doing this presentation together. Next slide, please, Alan. Okay, and I'll pass it off to Alan and he'll go over sort of the world of grants at ODOT, and then we'll get into the specifics of the Safe Routes to School and Oregon Community Paths. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you very much. At ODOT, there are two types of things that we hand out money for. One is just the allocations that we give out to cities and counties that are based upon population, and those are all formula. And then we have grants, and these are some of the grant programs we have. We're going to be discussing the ones in the blue, the STIF, the Oregon Community Paths, and Safe Routes School, both construction and also education. But there are other ones also, such as the Small City Allotment, which is for cities under 5,000, the Federal Lands Access Program, the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program, All Roads Transportation Safety, or ARTS, and the TGM planning grants. These are all different opportunities that all allow some form of active transportation within the restrictions and confinements of those individual grant programs. And here's an example when we go through. You can see where I have it alphabetically: All Roads Transportation Safety, CMAC, which is congestion mitigation, FLAP, Federal Lands Access, Community Pass, Small City Allotments, Safe Routes to School Infrastructure and Education, and the TGM. And you can see where roadway repair obviously is not done by anyone except for a small city allotment that allows bike lanes and also sidewalks. Traffic calming can be done by some, paving gravel roads, bike lanes, sidewalks, crosswalks, multi-use pass. We are restricted with some of our programs at the state level for multi-use pass, because if we're using state highway funds, it has to be on roadways. So what you see in terms of multi-use pass are usually through other types of fees, taxes, or federal funds mostly. And we do some planning. There's very little planning that we allow with it, but we do have the TGM, the Transportation Growth Management, and the Oregon Community Pass that allows the first one allows for system plans, corridor plans, and then the Community Pass programs allows first 30% design, so it gets into the more pre-design work. And passing it off back to Leanne.
So it's Heidi. I'm actually going to take this slide. So just introducing Safe Routes to School in Oregon. So ODOT is just one piece to the entire Safe Routes to School. So we kind of like to bring that to attention. So we have the ODOT Safe Routes to School program, which is myself and Leanne. And collaboratively, we have a holistic program of me doing education and encouragement programming, and then her construction program. But largely, we partner with so many folks across the state who are transportation advocates and also professional Safe Routes to School practitioners in the local and regional Safe Routes to School. So we call them all of us as the network. And so this makes up our entire Oregon Safe Routes to School. So we try to communicate through our hubs, our regional hubs, and try to connect folks with other folks and ideas and keep things going. So it's not just ODOT's program that is interacting with folks, but other people can lean on each other. So as Leanne likes to say, it takes a village to really make a successful statewide program. Next slide. So in talking about our Safe Routes to School vision, together collaboratively, we envision our future where all Oregon students and families can choose this safe and active transportation options to commute to school. And there's many reasons for this, right? Most of us here are aware of those reasons, but we make this part of our vision daily in terms of thinking about not just the students that we work with or the parents of those students, but also the community plays a huge role in fostering this accessibility. So Safe Routes to School is not just about educating kids or building things for kids, building accessible construction projects for kids to get to and from school, but also to educate community members and get them involved in active transportation as well. So part of this vision comes from us investing in these great construction, education, and encouragement projects. We really prioritize underserved communities, trying to give them resources, support, ways to get help just to apply for grants, as well as encouraging them to apply and then to succeed while they are grantees. Also, we build and leverage these partnerships with agencies, schools, and community organizations to build in that sustainability piece so that when the Safe Routes to School funding is over for that grant, the project can still flourish. And so this involves us committing an ever-evolving transparent communication and evaluation strategy that helps us to engage and support these communities for long term. Next slide.
So I'll provide the Safe Routes to School update. So we generally provide grants and services, like that's the gist of our Safe Routes to School program. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had for construction, we've had about a total of $160 million worth of requests, as well as $4 million in requests for education programs. And we've been able to allocate, like get funds out the door, about $45 million for those construction projects and about $1.8 million for those education grants. And that's to local communities, cities, counties, health organizations, school districts, things along that line. We've been able to select 70 local construction projects. We've been able to write about 35 local Safe Routes to School plans. And we've been able to work on 31 local education programs. So next slide, please. So why Safe Routes to School? It's so that we can address those barriers to students walking and rolling to school. We're able to build kind of like the bread and butter of the bike ped transportation system. They are small but mighty projects that generally don't rise to the top of other programs, but are really important to the community. So they're like sidewalks, crossings, rapid flashing beacons, flashing school zone signs. They're really basic things. So we find that we're doing a lot of improved crossings, or a lot at adding safety to crossings or making new crossings. We're also putting in a lot of curb ramps and making more walkways and sidewalks. We're doing a lot of lighting, really basic stuff that makes it safe for people to be outside and access things like school. So it's exactly what you think it would be, the Safe Routes to School construction projects. And then our education grants are things like bike and pedestrian education programs for students, and walk and roll to school day, the Ruby Bridges walk to school day, lots of events that encourage walking and biking, as well as educating students on how to do it safely. And we find when those things happen together, when we build those projects and we provide those educational opportunities, we see an increase in kids being able to walk and bike to school. So that is sort of the why for Safe Routes to School. Next slide, please. This one's
so yeah. So we just finished up the last solicitation for the education grants, and the construction grants are going into their phase 2 of the application. So we're really close to announcing this next phase, which will be the federal fiscal year 2023 through 2025 funding. So our next grant solicitation will be early spring of 2024. So we're working off of a 2-year cycle. So both of our grants are synced up to that same cycle. So for the education grants, we have the 1.3 million annually approximately, and construction grants 15 million. So this provides us with planning assistance and additional services and other year-round resources. So I'll give a plug to our website, OregonSafeRoutes.org. If you're interested in any, not just funding, but anything to do with Safe Routes to School, I would go to that website and sign up for the newsletter there, and check out a lot of the resources. But in looking ahead, really, we have more funding coming down the pipeline than we've ever had before for both the education and the construction grants. So we're making plans right now to spend upwards of 40 million extra total for Safe Routes to School. 10 million of that is addressing the barriers through the strategic program, the bicycle strategic program in the 24-27 STIP. And then we just got $30 million in federal funds as a one-time lump sum given to both Leanne or to the construction and education side, as likely toward our existing programs, being in the years 2023 through 2026. So suffice it to say, we have a lot of things going on both sides of the program, but we will have even more so in the years to come. So we're celebrating that. Next slide.
So this is kind of the high level overview of the grant opportunities. So you'll see in sort of the middle column, the Safe Routes to School construction program, talking about who's eligible. School districts are eligible for our project identification program, and cities, counties, transit districts, tribes, and other road authorities are eligible for our construction program, as well as our project identification program. How much money you can ask for as much as $2 million. There is a match requirement of 40%, but is likely reduced to 20% if you can meet a few criteria. And within that next round, we will actually likely be able to fund projects within a 2-mile radius of schools. Traditionally, it's been 1 mile, but I'm 99% sure that we're going to be able to move that to 2 miles for our next cycle in 2024. We run these cycles every 2 years and look for it in 2024. And Heidi, you can take the education side.
Sure. So eligibility is pretty much the same as Leanne's, with the caveat that we have nonprofit organizations, not written on there, but tribes can also apply. And we have about $1 million annually. So this is usually divided. Each project is probably no more than max 100,000 per year, just depending on the tier that you're eligible to apply for. There is a 12% match, but this can be in kind donation, such as volunteer time to commit to your project. The types of projects that are eligible is basically anything that has to do with education around Safe Routes to School. So this can be hiring a coordinator, to things like education, paying for kids to learn bicycle and pedestrian safety, materials, campaigns, I don't know, just also like bike fleet education, bike rodeos, bike trains, walking school buses, all sorts of things. So anything education focused. Again, similar to Leanne's, cycles every 2 years. The next cycle starts on 2024.
And finally, our planning assistance, also called the Project Identification Program. The main point of this program is to sort of build the pipeline of Safe Routes to School projects to be available for future funding. And this is one of my favorite programs that we run, and it has not been oversubscribed yet. So we've been able to fund everybody who's applied in the past, which is wonderful. And we fund school districts, cities, counties to really create a Safe Routes to School plan that prioritizes the construction projects around the school, as well as prioritizes some intro into what education program you could also do to address the barriers to students walking and biking to school. So it's not a grant, but it's for consultant services. And we consult generally with Alta Planning and Design to do this service for us. And we get a lot of really good feedback about how great this is in a community. Match is not required for this. All communities are eligible. However, if we are oversubscribed, we will prioritize small communities that don't have planning capacity and have high needs communities. This also runs every 2 years, and the next cycle will be in 2024. Next slide, please. So the best way to stay informed about these opportunities is to sign up to receive email updates. So if you Google ODOT SRTS or ODOT Safe Routes to School, you should come up with the ODOT site, and you can sign up to receive email updates on that site using our Gov delivery system. So that is my advice for keeping up to date on what's happening next, especially around funding with Safe Routes to School. Thank you all very much. Alan, I think it's you next. Oh, never mind. I think Heidi's going to wrap us up.
Yeah, this is just our contact information. If you want to talk to me more about education program ideas or grant cycles, you can contact me through this email. Leanne is through construction. You can also contact us through the OregonSafeRoutes.org website and join in on any of the regional hub meetings. You don't have to be a Safe Routes to School grantee to join in on the regional hubs. So that might be a good way to find out more about what's going on in Safe Routes. And I think that's the next slide.
Thank you both so much. Again, my name is Alan Thompson. I'm the Oregon Community Pass Program Manager. It's a sort of new program that was established in 2019. It's already had one cycle. We're getting ready to start the second one. It's the first dedicated transportation program in Oregon, at least with ODOT, dedicated to off-road active transportation projects. It complements on-street ped bike program and the Safe Routes School, because there are some things that they can't do because they're on street, and we can do things that are off street. There are several things that we look at. We look at critical links, which is like a first mile, last mile to destinations, and then regional paths, which are longer distance paths that connect communities. Example, the Bear Creek Greenway or Portland Springwater Corridor. We also figure that you're going to be crossing roads, rivers, freeways, railroad tracks. So those crossings itself will do. And since this is a brand new program, we also planned some preliminary planning that would normally not be done because there was no funding before. So the funding itself never happened. Excuse me. This is what our first cycle, we had about $15 million in funds, and we had 7 planning projects and 16 construction projects. This was a mix of both federal and state funds. We had 8.2 million in federal and $7 million in state, and we were able to fund $13 million in construction and $1.5 million for planning. Now, this is the first 30% that then gets people or communities ready to apply for future construction dollars. And this is an example of a critical link. This is the Astoria Riverwalk lighting. The trail already exists going east of the primary employment and tourist destinations near the Maritime Museum, but there were there's no lighting there. So we all know that Oregon gets very dark in the wintertime. And so this gives the opportunity for communities to the east of the area to be able to commute for longer hours in the wintertime rather than having to take cars. This is an example of a regional path. This is the Newburgh-Dundee Bypass Trail. You have the new bypass. They're looking at developing that area in the middle, and gives the opportunity to connect those 2 existing neighborhoods with a regional path. There's a large basin in there where you have Hess Creek. So you not only have a path going through, but you're also going to have to construct a pedestrian bike bridge about 670 feet long to connect those 2. And then that connects to existing bikeways and pedestrian facilities over in Dundee. So it's a great way of expanding the ability to bike for work or for pleasure or for utilities in that area. So what do we have? Because of the new budget thing, we normally would have $18 million in federal funds for the next for each cycle coming up. But because we're getting some IIJA, we have $30 million available for this upcoming cycle. It is all federal funds because we're waiting for our state funds to build back up. State funds must be cash on hand, and we expended it all in the very first cycle. So we're building it up, and we expect to have about $4 million in state funds available for the 2024 cycle, but we're coming up on the first cycle now. We have who's eligible: school districts, cities, counties, transit districts, or tribes. So this really does complement Safe Routes to School. This really does complement the on-street ped bike program. How much money per application for planning? It's $150,000 to $750,000. These are federal dollars. And for construction, $500,000 all the way up to $6 million. But previously, it was 200,000 to 4 million. And there were some projects that just could not be funded because they were too expensive. Now that we have more money, we can fund some larger projects. Is a match required? Yes, 10.27%, and that of the total project cost. And that is required upfront. It goes into an account, and as we pay invoices, then we pay down that account, and any money left over gets paid of the match goes back to the district. What projects are eligible? Priority is off-system, multi-use bicycle or footpaths. There may be times and situations where you'll be crossing a roadway, or it may be that there's a small section where it would be a cycle track or a bike lane, but we try to avoid that as much as possible because that is funded with Ped Bike program. And this is biennial, every 2 years, and the next cycle starts August of 2022. So there are two different types here. We have construction and project refinement. The key difference from what I said earlier is that the project refinement is the first 30% design. And the reason why we do that is there's a federal rule that says that if you start planning or if you start engineering, preliminary design and engineering of a project using federal dollars, that you have to construct it within 10 years, or you have to reimburse the federal government all your money that was spent for this, all the federal money that was spent on this. So if we go to the first 30% design, we're not getting into the Environmental Protection Act. We're not getting into the preliminary design. What we're doing is we're doing the first 30 preliminary engineering. We're doing the first 30% design. So this is a planning document that you're producing that then gets you set up to apply for construction. And if for some reason during the course of this, the plan results are that this will not work, or the applicant decides in the future that they do not want to construct, this gives them the opportunity to bow out and not have to pay back the money for that. So we keep it at that level. This is also the same funding cycle for construction starting in August 2022. We do have the pre-applications templates on our website, along with FAQ and guidelines for anyone that wants to start looking at the potential for Community Pass grants. And again, here's our website and my email. If you just Google Oregon Community Pass, it'll go straight to it. And there's a link on the side to sign up for emails and through the government, through the GovList as well. So it's a great way to get going. The other program is the Statewide Transportation Infrastructure Fund. And this is a transit fund. The eligible fund recipients are mass transit transportation districts, federally recognized tribes, and counties. And they had like $188 million. The majority of that goes through the formula process, where it's all doled out based upon populations, et cetera. But a small section is let me back that up. It's funded through the transit tax, which is state payroll tax of the 1/10 of 1%. So that allows it to be used for funds that are not on the roadway because it doesn't use highway funds. Its revenues are allocated across 4 funds: the formula program, which is the vast majority, the discretionary grant program, the intercommunity grant program, and the technical resource center. The formula fund receives 90%, and it disperses to mass transit districts, transportation districts, or counties without either a mass transit district or a transportation district, and to federally recognized tribes based on the formula. Now, the STIF discretionary and intercommunity discretionary are distributed through a competitive grant process every 2 years. And we solicit projects that would advance based upon 6 project criteria, including projects that would improve transit for historically underserved communities, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, expand intercity connections, and improve roadway safety. So if there is an opportunity to connect a bike lane to a transit center, to have bike lockers at a major transit center, or a bike room, these are all opportunities to where this money can be used, because then it allows active transportation as a way of interconnecting. So Is a match required? Yes, 20% match for all project types, although there may be a match reduction where a project meets certain characteristics, indicating extra jurisdictional project benefits. Excuse me. And that I don't know what that criteria is, unfortunately, off the top of my head. These are flexible fund sources supporting most projects that improve or expand public transportation. Light rail capital is ineligible. And then what's the funding cycle? Every 2 years. And here are your contacts: Maggie Charles, who can be here today, Patrick DePriest, and David Graff. They all can answer questions. And the website is Oregon.gov, ODOT, just if you statewide transportation infrastructure fund. The other one is the Federal Lands Access Program. This is an interesting one because this is fully funded by the federal government, and it improves facilities that provide access to or adjacent to or are located within federal lands. Oregon has one of the highest rates of federal lands per capita as compared to the entire, or in terms of miles, square miles of total land compared to just about any other state. So we receive an awful lot of money for that. And what you see in that picture there is part of the Columbia River Gorge bikeway pathway, multi-use path that goes along the original Columbia Gorge Highway. And this was actually funded through FLAP, that one section of it. And it supplements state and local resources for public roads, transit systems, and other transportation facilities with an emphasis on high-use recreation sites and economic generators. So Mount Hood is in a federal land, so access to that as an example. And who is eligible? State, county, town, township, tribal, municipal, or local government where the title or maintenance responsibility for the project facility is vested. So if you are going to have a bike lane that connects to a federal land, and you would be the one, your city would be the one responsible for that, you would be eligible. The key thing is you have to partner with the federal land management agency that owns that federal land. So whether it's the Department of Forestry, whether it is the Bureau of Land Management, there's like 4 different federal agencies that own the land. Those are the key ones that you have to partner with and connect with in order to be able to apply for these funds. No match is required. And it varies. There was, I think, $23 million in program for the last cycle. So it could be a public highway, road, bridge, trail, transit system that is located on or adjacent to, provides access to federal lands. You can do transportation research, engineering, preventative maintenance, rehabilitation, restoration, construction, or reconstruction of transportation facilities located on or adjacent to or that provide access to federal lands, including provisions for pedestrians and bicycles. It's every 2 or 4 years. The decision is made locally. The next application cycle is to be determined. It just ended. And the way it works is there's a 3-person program decisions committee that is made up of an ODOT representative, a representative from the Oregon Association of Counties, and a representative from Federal Lands Management, or excuse me, from the not FHWA, but the Federal Highway Land Agency. Is the project endorsed by the pertinent Federal Land Management Agency? That's the key question. Does the project provide access to high-use recreation sites or federal economic generators? Is the project consistent with the owner's long-range transportation plan? So that would be the STP. Is it consistent with the Land Management Agency or other planning efforts in the state and or region? And our region covers Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. Does the project improve safety while improving access to a federal facility? Can the project be realistically completed based upon the scope, schedule, and proposed budget? That is the toughest question to ask for not just this program, but for every program, every grant program. And does the project sponsor have the ability to meet any local match requirements? Sometimes there are some, apparently. And Gary Farnsworth, and he's ODOT Region 4. he represents the project decisions committee, and so he represents the state on that committee, and he basically manages this program for the entire state. And any questions, you can just contact him. There's his email address. And the last one is the Transportation Growth Management Services, and they do planning grants. And they have the transportation planning and land use and transportation planning. And they provide community assistance, code assistance, quick response, outreach and education, and transportation system plan assessment. And they have a little link down there at the bottom. And what they have is they have a planning grant where you can do corridor plans, you can do transportation system plans, you can do a bicycle master plan, but it's an opportunity to develop a plan that then allows a future application through either Safe Route School, through the Oregon Community Pass program, through dedicated funding through the PED Bike program, but it provides the opportunity to get things set up for future development. And their next grant application period happens in next week. That's when it begins, and applications are due July 28th, and the awards announcements will be in mid-late September. And the link is there at the bottom. And it's if you just Google ODOT Transportation Growth Management Services, this should take you right to their page. And then we have the All Roads Transportation Safety, or ARTS. It's a statewide safety program that addresses safety for all public roads in the state. Active transportation is part of it. It uses data-driven safety methods. So you're eligible if you meet certain safety requirements and that they use to determine not how dangerous the road is, but how many collisions have occurred. Have there been pedestrian bicyclist fatalities? As in an intersection where these happen? All these come into play, and then they determine what is the best solution. And so you have a hotspot where it's been determined that there are fatalities, and they look at it. Then there are systemic ones which look at various problems that are not just in an area, but it could be throughout the state, but that can be fixed. And those include roadway departures, which happen a lot. That's why you see an awful lot of rumble strips being built in very rural areas to keep people, if they start nodding off, that it wakes them up. Intersections, which have a high amount of different modes intersecting different directions, all these things come into play. And so the variability of different directions, different modes can cause a lot of problems in terms of cars and people and bicycles all hitting each other. And of course, the PED bike, what are the issues for pedestrians and bicyclists, whether it be a lack of sidewalks in dangerous area, or it could be that a roadway just has potholes in a bike lane that needs to be fixed, things along that nature. And who's eligible? Qualified entities are counties and local governments. $30 million a year is a match required. They improve, expand, or maintain transportation services in Oregon, as long as they don't supplant local funding. The third round of ARTS selection begins in 2020, expands through 2021. Projects are selected through the STIP, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. That is our funding document that we update every year. Every project that we work on has to be in the STIP. And so this next one will be delivered in the years 2025 through 2027. And I think that where I said what projects are eligible, I think that is a misnomer, because that should be all about safety there. So I apologize for that. And with that, I will stop and say thank you and just open it up for any questions you may have. And I see something here. The Rural Transportation Equity Programming intends to engage underserved transportation disadvantaged communities to identify transportation challenges and provide strategic investment planning support to prepare prioritized projects for forthcoming state and federal funding. Opportunities related to biking, walking, and transit. The focus is on communities of less than 20,000 populations and outside Metropolitan Planning Organization boundaries. Thank you, Madeline. And I'm going to have to add that to my list. You see on that matrix, it's going to be too big for a presentation.
Thanks for letting me add it up at the last minute there.
Oh, greatly appreciate it.
So we know that that was a lot of information, and I'm not really sure how the delivery system for a lot of information is flawed for sure. So feel free to put in the chat, raise your hand, turn your video off, turn your microphone on. If you have a project in mind, like that sometimes is a good place to start. Like, this is the project. Can y'all help me figure out which one of these crazy myriad of restrictive programs might help address this need? Yeah, Leah. Or Lee, I'm not sure exactly how you say it.
It's Leah. Thanks.
Leah.
Sorry, I'm trying to get everything turned on. Thank you. Really informative presentation. So in my role, I work a lot with community who often will come. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, someone muted me. Who will often come to me and say, hey, we have this concern about this area. We want to do something. So I'm working with people that at times have some financial ability to pay, obviously not to the extent of an infrastructure project, but could potentially do some fundraising. They may have time to maybe invest in like some kind of education outreach, organizing, or working with Safe Routes to School and their PTA to do some kind of education programming. So I feel I came to this in part to kind of understand what opportunities are out there for funding projects or funding or supporting people who are wanting to take action. And so I guess like that's kind of just the perspective that I'm coming from. And so I appreciated learning. I'm always learning about Safe Routes to Schools. I'm not an expert, but I feel like that's a really like community based and like opportunity for community. And I'm curious if in Portland, I know that the city of Portland also, I don't know if they're using the same bucket of funding that they get from ODOT to do their own like prioritization, or do they have like a separate Safe Routes to School that's a separate thing? And if I were a community member working with my PTA in Portland to do a small infrastructure project that's probably already listed on one of the projects, but actually needs to be funded, how would you recommend a community member like moving forward to apply for that?
Yeah, so kind of what Heidi was saying before, it kind of takes a village to get our kids to school safely, and ODOT runs a very specific program, but there are many other programs are separate than ODOT's program. So we're not like the mothership program and everyone's just under us. PBOT, Portland Bureau of Transportation, has a really robust Safe Routes to School program that was funded, I think starting in like 2006 or 2007 through an increase in traffic safety fines. So they've been doing it a while. And probably Janice McDonald or Lale Santelices would be the two people that I would reach out to first at the city of Portland to say like, hey, is this project on your radar? Because they did do a pretty robust planning process for some funds that they got. I can't remember the name of the funds or the year, but that was outside of ODOT funding. That was local funding. And many communities have their own sort of prioritization process. So also the city of Eugene has a selection criteria process that they use to help figure out which projects are the most important. And then when they get to those most important projects, then they start looking for funding for them. So they might find funding locally to build them. They might apply to ODOT to build those projects. So that's generally how it works, but each community has a different way to do it. And some communities don't really have a system to rank their projects or figure out which ones are going to be built next. But City of Portland, I think, kind of does. So Janice McDonald or Lale would be.
So what I'm hearing is the path, at least in Portland and maybe other cities that have a robust Safe Routes to School program, is to connect with the city and see where the prioritization of that project is. A community group couldn't partner with a PTA and then apply for ODOT funds to fund a Safe Routes to School project. That wouldn't
Correct.
be.
because the road authority is then the road authority is the entity that actually owns that road and can build on it. So it's got to be a city or a county or a tribe. Because the road authority is so integral in delivering the project, approving the design of the project, that's who
Right.
to apply for the program. However, it is like road authorities are public, public agencies. So call them up and tell them what you think. And remember that like we're all bureaucrats, but and we all work within this world, but our bosses are elected officials. Like that's
Right.
who are
Understand.
ultimately.
Okay. Yeah,
bosses
that's
are.
helpful. So then a PTA could apply for a project on their property. So it's whoever has the authority is the needed applicant. It's
Right.
not like you'd have
So,
an
and even
applicant and
that-
then they'd have to partner. Okay.
Even that it might need to be the school district. So for like the community paths program,
Yeah. Sorry, school district. Yeah.
it's that program you can build off of the public right of way. And so like a school district, so the PTA could advocate to the school district to apply for those funds. The PTA could fundraise for the match, like the
Mhm.
can definitely be involved. But I think the only program that a PTA might be able to apply for might be Heidi's, the education program, although they'd need to be a nonprofit. So
Okay.
I don't know how many PTAs.
Like a 501c3 nonprofit.
Nonprofit.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, you got
Sorry,
the
it took a
long
lot
answer.
of time. I apologize, but that was really helpful to kind of like put all the pieces in place.
It's a lot. Does anyone else have another fun, detailed question that we can see if we can get at the answer to? A
Yeah,
project.
and we have the same situation with Community Pass. So the same thing that Leanne said is would doubly apply to the Community Pass program as well.
We did have a request to share the presentation. Lindsay, do you all share the presentations in the Zoom?
I think send it to Maddie. And I think there's a way that she can share it.
Great.
Maddie Carlson, okay. We have a grant for that presentation. I'm doing that right now. And the key focus of this, and I hope that we met it, is we're trying to say, traditionally, you hear a community hears about a grant and says, "Oh, there's a grant coming through. Let's find a way to fund something through this grant." This way, in reality, what we're hoping is that by relaying this information, you can say, I have this I want to do. What is the best grant that gives me the opportunity to fund this, rather than scrambling and trying to squeeze a round peg into a square hole.
Yeah, this particular slide and oh no, wait, I'm sharing the wrong screen. Hang on, there it is. This slide is the one that I think, oh shoot, never mind. I'm gonna try one more time.
You want me to open up? Oh, I think I,
You know what, you probably know which slide I'm trying to show.
yeah.
Am I showing it? Is it?
I'm trying to find just how to get back into the chat. There it is. Yep, this is the one.
Okay, so this is the one I think that is probably the most helpful. It's full of acronyms, so you kind of have to cross-reference, but this is the slide where if you're like, oh, I want to build this particular thing, this type of chart will help you kind of see what funding sources are potentially available.
And each one of them has their own little vagaries and things, like the small city allotment is only for cities under 5,000. Congestion mitigation and air quality, that is only available to those areas that are in non-attainment by the federal government. There's just a few of those. So there's, so it gives, depending upon where you are, different options.
Any other questions? Any other projects you all want to talk through?
Okay, well, I do have the email to Maddie Carlson all set up saying we have a grant for that to please share with participants.
If we have a little more time, sorry, I'm being super, I haven't asked any other questions at any other things. I guess I wanted to just share, and it's not necessarily up to you all to solve that problem, but just maybe it's an opportunity for Heidi to keep in mind, or other groups, is that, again, given my work with community, there's just like so much energy and interest around active transportation, at least in the city of Portland, which is the city that I work in, and I imagine that extends across the state. It would be so wonderful to have like a way or a funnel or like a channel for a lot of like very involved and community volunteers and people who are very interested in doing advocacy for transportation infrastructure improvements, particularly related to biking and walking, either like at the state level. Like a lot of times I try to tell people like they need to advocate at the state level to increase the size of the pie, right? Because we're all fighting for limited funds to get all of these improvements done. And if there was some kind of like channel for them, either to do train the trainer and do walking school buses and like that kind of stuff, but then also to be encouraged or have some kind of like avenue to advocate at the state level for increased funding for transportation improvements. Like just, I don't know, I'm always just struggling to like give people something that they can do to take action to improve walking and biking infrastructure and safety in their community. And definitely like with an equity perspective in mind, like trying to educate people on like, you know, you're in an area that does have more better infrastructure. So, you know, we need to work in East Portland first, or we need to work in North Portland first to improve safety and enhance walkability there before you're going to get that crosswalk in your neighborhood in Southwest or whatever it might be. But I don't know. So just if you have any ideas, I would welcome them, but also just to share that there is a lot of like energy and interest in community to support active transportation, whether it's advocacy or education. I mean, infrastructure is always what people want, but if we can redirect if we need to.
Yeah, Leah, I appreciate that. You know, honestly, you kind of nailed it. A lot of folks get really excited about the construction side of the safe routes, and they don't necessarily think about the education side as being a large component of it until they get the project, and then they realize that there needs to be education around the project and excitement and gearing people to use the enhancement. And also too, a lot of folks might not have it together too, for whatever reason, it's not prioritized, or may not have it together to do the infrastructure project, but they have that energy like what you're talking about. And that's where the education side really comes into play, because if they can take some of that energy and build it towards some education projects or some education outreach and engagement, that can kind of like help to get more of that community partnerships going, to kind of put some more of that prioritization of the build project that they're looking for through you know, a lot of the encouragement events, and people start to kind of see like, okay, there people want this and people want to do these things and people are willing to come together. And like bike rodeos are great, a great way to do that, because you can invite all sorts of people from the community to participate in a bike rodeo. They see kids doing these things and it's like, oh my gosh, we could actually have this all the time and do this happen. Oh, really? Well, if you would like to make this happen, we also need to do these things too. So it's kind of, you know, when you get those events going through the education side, it also builds excitement too in the community with partners who may not actually see it in motion until they see it in motion. And so we always encourage people to try to think about these projects as being collaborative and integrative. And like, we recommend that people do education programming alongside or before or after a project. But if they can't do a infrastructure project at the time, there is still some kind of educational or encouragement programming that can be done, and they can apply for, right now we have like our competitive grant cycle is set up into like three tiers. And so the first tier is for those people who are interested and just trying to figure out what it is that they can do on the education side. So we pay a consultant to work with them to kind of develop like a implementation plan of like what is needed, what do they want to do, what is feasible, what's possible, what can be prioritized, who do we need to pull together to make this happen. And so I agree, there's a lot you can do, and especially like those kind of energized people are oftentimes the ones who will volunteer to do things like a bike rodeo and stuff. So I think I'm kind of reiterating what you're saying, but there are things that they can do through the education side to kind of steer their community in a direction.
No need to, we're glad you're taking up space, Leah. I'm imagining the other people that are on the call, like listening to us in the background. This is at least in some way also informative for all of you, eating your snacks or whatever you're doing this afternoon. But I think we have like 4 minutes left. So if anyone else has any other questions, happy to talk through solutions or potential solutions.
There's a lot of federal money, so think big. I have an unofficial goal that every city in the state of Oregon should be connected via bikeways and walkways.
Thanks all for putting together a great presentation with all of it's like a great summary sheet of all of the opportunities out there. And I hope that we can channel them into some lovely places throughout the state.
Thanks. And if you don't get an email from Maddie with the presentation, just go to contact me at at the Oregon Community Pass, and I will email you that. I'll email you a copy. And I will incorporate yours for next year.